They say motherhood changes everything. What they don't say is how it reveals the cracks in your life you've been too busy or too hopeful to notice. For me, it all started with a test. A simple stick with 2 pink lines that turned my world upside down. I remember sitting on the cold tile floor of the bathroom, the morning sun bleeding through the blinds. My heart raced with disbelief and, yes, joy. Brandon and I had talked about having kids eventually. Not now, not yet, but eventually. I was scared, yes, but part of me was excited too. I waited until that evening to tell him. We were in the kitchen. I was making one of his favorites, shrimp scampi with lemon butter, and I held the test in my hand like it was a gift wrapped in hope. When I showed him, he stared at it for a second. No smile. No hug. Just silence. Then he chuckled. "You're pregnant?" he said, not even looking up from his phone. "Yeah," I replied softly, waiting for something, anything. That's when he smirked. A slow, smug grin that made my stomach twist. "Well," he said, setting his phone down, "guess that means you're done with all that office nonsense now." I froze. "What do you mean?" He shrugged like it was obvious. "Come on, babe. You can't work a high-stress job and raise a kid. My mom always says a woman's real job starts when she has a child." "I'm not quitting my job," I said, still trying to process what he'd said. "I can work and be a mom." He smiled wider. "Or, you can stay home and actually raise our child." I always wanted a housewife. Someone who's there. Someone who prioritizes family. Something inside me cracked right then. I spent the next few weeks trying to reason with him, trying to make him understand that I loved my career, that I could do both. But every time I brought it up, it was met with the same dismissive tone, the same smug grin. The smirk of a man who thought he'd won. Then his mother moved in. She said it was to help with the baby. But it wasn't help she brought. It was surveillance. Control. Manipulation dressed up in concern. She criticized everything, what I ate, what I wore, how I worked, how I breathed. "You need to stop working, dear," she told me one morning over tea. "It's not good for the baby, and honestly, it's not proper. A good mother focuses on her family, not chasing money." Brandon didn't defend me. He agreed. "I just think it's time you shifted gears," he said. "You've been ambitious long enough. Now it's time to be a mom." They didn't ask me. They told me. And just like that, I was no longer a partner. I was a vessel. A servant. A tool to fulfill their expectations. But what they didn't know was that I don't break, I bend. And when I bend far enough, I always snap back hard. The first thing to go was my office. It wasn't even a conversation. One day, I came back from a prenatal appointment, and all my files, books, and equipment were gone. In their place? A guest bed and floral curtains. My mother-in-law's luggage sat in the corner like a declaration of war. "We thought it'd be nice to keep her close," Brandon said when I confronted him. "You mean permanently? She'll be helping you after the baby comes. You'll need it." No one asked what I needed. Suddenly, my world was rearranged without permission. The walls closed in. The air felt thinner. I tried to maintain some semblance of control. I worked remotely for a while, but the interruptions were constant. My mother-in-law would walk in mid-Zoom call, scoffing at how silly it was for me to still pretend I had a real job. Brandon stopped encouraging me. He stopped listening altogether. I remember one night, I sat beside him on the couch, laptop open, writing a pitch presentation for a last-ditch client. He looked at me like I was a child refusing bedtime. "Why are you doing this? We don't need the money." "It's not about money, Brandon. It's about me." He didn't get it. Or maybe he didn't care. What's worse? He started controlling the finances. He said it was more efficient if my direct deposits went to a joint account he managed. I was pregnant, hormonal, and exhausted. I gave in, just to keep the peace. Then came the household rules. No store-bought meals. No delivery. I had to cook fresh 3 times a day because that's how real women do it. My wardrobe was too sharp for a mom, so my tailored suits and heels were boxed up and replaced with pastel nightgowns. It was like watching myself vanish. Piece by piece. I was the one cooking, cleaning, organizing baby things, and taking care of his mother, who had no medical issues but acted like an invalid the moment anyone walked in the room. "You're not doing enough," she said one afternoon, eyeing the dishes in the sink. "You're going to be a mother soon. Learn to handle pressure." I was 8 months pregnant, standing on swollen feet, and she was telling me I wasn't enough. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I bought a journal and began documenting everything. Every snide remark, every financial manipulation, every moment Brandon ignored my voice and sided with his mother. They thought I was getting weaker. But really, I was getting smarter. And angry. So very angry. The moment that sealed it for me was a seemingly ordinary dinner. Brandon had invited a few friends over. I spent the whole day cooking and setting the table while they all sat in the living room talking stocks and sports. When they finally sat down to eat, one of his friends complimented the roast. "Wow, man, you really lucked out with a wife who cooks like this and works in finance." Brandon laughed. That smirk again. "Oh, she doesn't work anymore," he said with pride. "She's full-time housewife material now." Exactly what I wanted. Everyone laughed. Except me. That night, after they left, I stared at myself in the mirror. Hair tied back, apron smeared with grease, circles under my eyes. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. But I saw her spark. She was still in there. That night, after putting the dishes away and faking smiles at his mother's comments about how the guests liked her centerpiece, I pulled out my laptop and opened an old email account I'd abandoned when I stepped away from work. There was one message I knew I'd find. My former VP, Nadine, had told me, "If you ever decide to come back to the real world, I'll make room." And so I typed, "Let's talk this week." The moment I hit send on that email, something in me shifted. It was a whisper at first, a flicker of defiance, but it lit up every dark, buried part of me that had grown silent over the past several months. I didn't sleep that night. My heart wouldn't let me. It was racing, not with fear, but with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. By morning, Nadine had responded. "Of course I want you back. We'll talk options. Zoom? Tomorrow 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time?" I nearly cried reading it. I wanted to scream and laugh at the same time. After all these months of feeling like I was losing myself, someone still remembered me. Still valued me. But I couldn't just jump back in. Not yet. This had to be done quietly. Strategically. I knew what I was up against: Brandon, his overbearing mother, a household I didn't control. Finances I didn't touch. I couldn't let them catch wind of what I was doing. I needed time. A plan. Patience. I moved carefully. The next morning, I woke up early, made breakfast as usual: eggs, toast, coffee for Brandon, peppermint tea for his mother, and pretended everything was fine. I wore that bland smile they expected from me, nodding along to their idle talk. I even offered to iron his shirts for the week. Brandon was smug, satisfied. He kissed me on the forehead like I was his obedient doll, and left for work. At exactly 10, I snuck into the laundry room with my old laptop and joined the Zoom call. There she was, as Nadine, sharp as ever, black-rimmed glasses, bold red lipstick, and that same unapologetic energy I'd always admired. "Catherine," she said, smiling wide. "It's damn good to see your face again." "You too," I replied. And I meant it. We talked for nearly an hour. She didn't push. She didn't pry. She just told me what was available, what had changed in the company, and what I could work on remotely for now. There was a new department head who needed financial analysts for a private initiative, low visibility but high impact. No titles, no public email addresses. No LinkedIn changes. Perfect for someone who needed to operate in stealth. And the best part? The pay would be routed to a private consulting firm account. One I could register under my maiden name. Freedom. I said yes before she even finished. That week, I began rebuilding. Every night, when Brandon and his mother went to bed, I worked. From midnight to 3 a.m., I crunched numbers, created models, set reports, and proved myself all over again, except this time, with more grit and clarity than I ever had before. During the day, I played the part of the doting housewife. I smiled through the judgmental glances. I cooked and cleaned and nodded politely when his mother said things like, "A child does best when the mother sacrifices her dreams." In those moments, I learned to bite my tongue so I could sharpen it for later. The money started rolling in after a few weeks, quiet, steady, and all mine. I opened a separate bank account, then a new P.O. box. I consulted a lawyer, an accountant, and a financial advisor. 3 Zoom meetings I took in the backyard under the pretense of getting fresh air. Brandon never suspected a thing. He was too busy gloating about how tamed I'd become. I even overheard him on the phone with his friend once, saying, "You just gotta break them early, man. Once the baby comes, they don't fight back." I recorded that conversation. Not for vengeance yet, but for leverage. Meanwhile, I took care of myself in ways they didn't notice. I met with a therapist. Online, of course. I began prenatal yoga in the basement while pretending to mop floors. I changed my diet, meditated, and journaled like my life depended on it, because it did. And slowly, I began to feel like me again. The old Catherine, the one who closed multi-million-dollar deals, who gave presentations to Fortune 500 execs, who was once listed in 30 Under 30, she wasn't gone. She was just resting. Now, she was awake. One afternoon, a month before my due date, Brandon walked into the kitchen and told me he was taking a solo trip with his friends. "You'll be fine here with Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. "You don't need me around every minute. Besides, you're practically just waiting to pop." I smiled and nodded. "Of course. You deserve a break." He left 2 days later. And so did I, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I called Nadine that same night and told her I was ready for the next level. "I want out," I said. Not just of the housewife gig. Of all of it. She didn't ask for details. She just said, "Let's make it happen." Brandon was gone for 5 days. 5 whole days where I didn't have to wear a mask. 5 days where I didn't have to pretend I was weak. The first night he left, his mother tried to play queen of the castle. She stood in the hallway and declared, "I'll be staying in your room tonight, dear. It's better if someone's there with you, just in case anything happens." I just blinked at her. "No, thank you. I sleep better alone." She didn't like that answer, of course. Huffed and grumbled and tried to use guilt as a weapon. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I went into that room, shut the door, and for the first time in months, locked it from the inside. That night, I slept in peace. By the 3rd day, I had arranged everything I needed. My hospital bag was packed and tucked away behind the laundry baskets, because heaven forbid I look too independent in her eyes. My private bank account had hit 5 figures. I had even contacted a private birthing center outside the city, one with concierge services, legal privacy, and non-disclosure policies. A discreet ride was arranged. A new phone purchased. A copy of every financial document I could collect from Brandon's files had been scanned and uploaded to my cloud folder. Because when I left, I wouldn't just be walking out. I'd be walking away with evidence. And then, right on cue, as if the universe knew I was ready, my water broke. It was 3 a.m. on a Saturday. The house was silent. Brandon was still away, probably drunk on some beach somewhere. His mother was asleep, snoring down the hall. I could have woken her. I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my go bag, took my hidden burner phone, and slipped out into the night like a woman escaping war. And in many ways, I was. The birthing center was a sanctuary, clean, quiet, warm, and most importantly, free of judgment. I was surrounded by midwives and nurses who treated me like a whole person, not just a vessel. I delivered my daughter just before noon. The moment she was placed in my arms, everything inside me shifted again. I had thought I was awake before. Now, I was alive. I named her Elena Joy. Not after anyone. Not a family name. Not a compromise. She was mine. And so was her future. I spent 3 days at the center recovering. During that time, I sent 2 emails. One to Nadine confirming my return to the team full-time in 6 weeks. The second to my attorney, attaching all the files I had gathered on Brandon's financial misconduct. Turns out, he had siphoned money from my name before forcing me to quit. Faked consent signatures. Took credit out under our joint marital account and hid purchases through his shell business. I would have let the betrayal slide once upon a time. But not now. Now? It was fuel. On the 3rd day, I checked the voicemail on my main phone, the one I left off during labor. 15 missed calls. 10 from Brandon, 5 from his mother. The first few were routine, call me back, where are you okay? Then came the panic. The aggression. Brandon's voice rose with each message, spiraling from fake concern to real fury. What the hell do you think you're doing, Catherine? He barked in the last one. You can't just disappear. You're my wife. You're the mother of my child. You belong at home. This crap ends now. I laughed. Because I realized something vital at that moment, he didn't know where I was. And he no longer had control. I made one call that day. Just one. It was to the security company I'd hired in advance. They would go to the house the next morning, retrieve my belongings, and deliver them to a condo I'd rented under my maiden name in the next city. I had left nothing to chance. The next 48 hours were chaos. Brandon called my sister. My former coworkers. Even Nadine, who, bless her, played dumb and redirected every call to her assistant. His mother texted from an unknown number, saying I was immature, unstable, and cruel for keeping his child away from her family. To which I replied, you are not her family. You treated me like a prisoner. You will never do that to her. And I blocked the number. The threats turned into legal letters. He tried to file for emergency custody, painting me as mentally unwell and reckless. But my lawyer had already filed first, with evidence, voice recordings, financial documents, therapy reports, and even witness statements from the birthing center staff praising my condition, preparation, and decision-making. He lost. Badly. He tried to plead next. Sent flowers to my condo. Apologies through mutual friends. I didn't know you were this unhappy, he said in one letter. Let's talk. We can fix this. But there was nothing to fix. Because the man I married had smirked while watching me crumble. He had handed me to his mother like property. And he wanted a housewife, not a partner. Well, now he had neither. And I wasn't just rebuilding. I was rising. There's a kind of silence that follows the fall of a giant. It's not peace. It's not even calm. It's the breath people hold when the house of cards finally collapses, and everyone's watching to see what lands first. That was Brandon now. And I was the one who gave the final push. Once the custody case tipped in my favor and the court ruled I would have full parental rights with Brandon limited to supervised visits, everything else started unraveling fast. His image as the respectable, family man entrepreneur took a nosedive, thanks, in part, to a little leak I allowed. It started with a single email. An anonymous tip sent to the local financial news blog about Brandon's business practices, shell accounts, ghost employees, tax inconsistencies, and fraudulent spending under joint credit lines. I didn't have to use my name. I didn't need to. I just attached the right documents in the right order and let the flames do the rest. Within 2 days, an exposé dropped with the headline, "Local Startup Darling Accused of Financial Fraud, Marital Misconduct." His company's board panicked. Investors pulled out overnight. Clients began demanding explanations. And Brandon, dear, arrogant Brandon, was suddenly scrambling to fix his image while trying to figure out how the hell this happened. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered how he smirked at me while I sobbed in our bedroom the day I told him I didn't want to quit my job. I remembered how his mother said, "A real woman prioritizes family over ambition." I remembered how he let them break me down. Day by day. Piece by piece. Until there was nothing left but exhaustion and isolation. So, no. I didn't feel bad. I felt vindicated. And I wasn't done. I returned to work quietly but confidently. Nadine had saved my position and even upgraded my role to a senior consultant on special projects. She greeted me with a hug and a knowing smile. "I've been waiting," she said, handing me my ID badge. "Glad to see the fires back in your eyes." "I brought a blowtorch," I replied. For weeks, I said nothing publicly about Brandon or the fallout. I didn't need to. The media did the work for me. Every lie he ever told, the perfect husband. The doting provider, the upstanding citizen, cracked under scrutiny. Reporters camped outside his office. People whispered in the coffee shops. His parents, once so smug, were seen at a charity event acting as if they were victims. That was cute. Then came the gala. It was a yearly fundraiser hosted by the city's Chamber of Commerce, where business leaders, philanthropists, and influencers showed up to preen and network. Brandon had once called it our ticket to the A-list. He never let me attend, said I wouldn't understand the conversations. Well. This time, I went. I arrived in a crimson floor-length gown, my hair in soft waves, Elena asleep in her nanny's arms at home. My lawyer was my +1. So was Nadine. The moment I entered, a hush swept the crowd. Cameras turned. Mouths gaped. Brandon was there, of course. Alone. His company's board had forced him to show up for PR, but the damage control wasn't working. His face went pale the second he saw me. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets like a schoolboy caught stealing. "Catherine," he said, voice low and tense. "What are you doing here?" I took a sip of champagne. "Enjoying the night." "You?" "I didn't think you'd be back in public this fast." Well, I smiled, I wasn't the one hiding. He glanced toward Nadine, then toward my lawyer. "Look, maybe we should talk. In private." I leaned closer, lips brushing his ear as I whispered, "You had your chance. You chose control over love. Now watch what freedom looks like." I stepped back and left him standing there, stunned, surrounded by murmurs and stares. He looked small. Not in stature. In spirit. For once, I wasn't the one being questioned. He was. The days that followed brought the final waves. Brandon was ousted from his own company. The financial audit led to legal probes. His assets were frozen pending investigations. His parents went radio silent after being subpoenaed for their involvement in the fraud. Apparently, Brandon had listed some properties under their names to hide them during our marriage. Turns out, That housewife they all wanted so badly, she was the only one with her name clean on record. In an ironic twist, Brandon begged for joint custody again. Tried to say we should raise Elena as a team. But I reminded him of the day he said he always wanted a housewife. You got what you wanted, I said calmly. Now I'll get what I deserve. The court agreed. He got supervised visitation twice a month. No overnights. No parental authority. No financial say. He looked like a ghost the day the ruling came down. He had no wife. No business. No image. And the housewife he thought he broke, she was the storm that ended his reign.